Hey everyone, welcome to Real Person Reviews. My name is Sam, and I'm a real person. And today I want to talk to you, finally, about The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes for Nintendo 3DS. And I know I was going to talk about it before, during Zelda month and everything, but I didn't because I didn't beat it in time. And now I've pretty much beat it, so I figured it was time to talk about it. I'll explain a little more about what I mean by that saying. But if you don't want to, watch the whole thing and hear me ramble about stuff, you can go the link in the description, or just go to www.thegravelpit.net and check it out there, the written review. Alright, so get to it. The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes is a multiplayer Zelda game, which, it's an interesting idea. It's not the first. The idea was kind of toyed with the Game Boy Advance port of A Link to the Past, which had the four swords as a little mini game thing you could do with other people who had the game and such, which was later expanded into a full-fledged experience on the GameCube called Four Swords Adventures. But that also had this weird barrier to entry thing you had to do, where if you wanted to play with multiple people, you had to have everyone had to have a Game Boy Advance and a special cord to plug it into your GameCube. And not a lot of people talk about it. I don't know if that went over that well, and I think especially now the barrier to entry is probably too much to find the games, the people to play the games, make sure they have the Game Boy Advance and those special cables, which I don't think were super useful for a lot of other things anyway, so I don't think there's tons of them laying around anywhere. But the idea of having a multiplayer Zelda game has been there before, and this time it's on your 3DS, so at least that barrier to entry is kind of gone, because you can just kind of connect online, with the internet, so that's good. The really basic story is pretty much just that you're in the land of Hytopia, and which I suppose is a kingdom, and the princess has been cursed by a witch, and the land has been known for being very high fashion for whatever reason. But the princess gets cursed by a witch and is forced to wear this, it's a good, weird skin type outfit thing, and it's ugly. So, of course that's horrible, because it's not in fashion, I guess. And then it's your job as one of the three legendary heroes to go and get the pieces of this magical outfit that will lift the curse. So that's your motivation, and the gameplay mostly consists of going to, basically there are 8 areas, and within each area there are 4 levels, and each of the levels has 4 stages. Now, you pick an area, and typically that area is going to have some kind of theme, like a forest area, or like a fire area, or a water area. They all kind of have their little theming with them, and then the 4 levels, all fit under that theme. Typically the way the levels go is that the second level is typically, at the end of this, at that there's a mini boss. At the end of the 4th level there is a regular boss. Now once you pick a level, each of the stages has sort of that idea too, with the 2nd and 4th parts of them either being some type of boss or some other arrangement of tough enemies, with the 1st and 3rd being more puzzle oriented. In these levels, I guess in the levels, when you go to those different stages, the The 4 stages of each level are all continuous, though. You have to go through all of those in order. You don't get to pick those. So that's why there's all these distinctions between the things. And I'm just trying really hard to keep the terminology right. So typically how it also starts is that the first stage of a level is where your 3 characters will each get an item. And the items you pick up are things like, a boomerang or bow or bombs. Or even some different things that I believe are unique to the game. Things like a grip shot, which is a lot like a claw shot. Water rod and there's like a fire glove. So there's some old stuff, some new stuff, but you'll pretty much catch on how to use them fairly quickly, and the levels try to teach you how to use these items before they implement them in crazier ways. And after you beat the boss of the area, you will then unlock challenges for each of these areas. Which means you can go back and select levels, and then each level will have 3 additional challenges. And these challenges can range from things like, like a time trial, to making it so you only use like bombs, or ones where you have to pop a bunch of balloons. There's all kinds of different things that kind of toss at you to try and just mix up those levels a bit and make them more challenging. And it's there to kind of promote replay value. Also, when you complete a level, then there are 3 chests, and each hero picks a chest, and you get a random piece of treasure. And you get different kinds of treasures for doing these different challenges. Sometimes you can get rarer treasure, just it's easier to get a certain treasure in one of those challenges than it is in a different one, because there's 2 of them instead of just 1 in some sections. And sometimes a piece of treasure you want doesn't exist in that section, so you have to go somewhere else. And these materials that you get are used to make outfits. If you go to a shop in town, you use those materials and some rupees, and then you can make these different outfits. And these outfits will give you perks. You put them on at the beginning of a level. They have perks like some of them give you more hearts, some of them make your stamina meter larger, and some of them will just increase the power of the weapons you have, like making your boomerang do more damage and be larger, or making your bow shoot 3 arrows instead of just 1. So there's some interesting things there, and some of the stuff works on just you, and some of it buffs up your teammates. So that's an interesting thing to think about and try to strategize and coordinate with other people. And I mean, that's essentially it, besides having a daily riches place where you can just go in every day and try to get a random piece of treasure, and the shop that switches their items daily in town, where you can just buy a bunch of different materials, and every day they swap up and sell different stuff. So in case you're not necessarily feeling like going through all those challenges, or if you have a lot of rupees to spare, you can just go get the stuff there, and maybe save yourself some hassle and some time. So that's interesting. For the positives of this game, I do think it's first of all, I think it's very easy to say that it's very well polished. Visually, it looks great. I mean, it's the Link Between Worlds engine and everything, but it just looks really bright and vibrant, and it looks awesome. The sound effects and the music all sound really good. There's definitely nothing wrong with the presentation. Presentation is great. And I will say that it has a cool combination of action, puzzles, and mixing those together. And it's an interesting way of doing things because, you have 3 different people doing stuff, and you have this ability to pick your partners up, so you can have a stack of 2 people high or 3 people high. And the person on the bottom moves, the person on the top can use their items. So there's a lot of planning around that, by doing stuff, in both 2-dimensionally doing things and 3-dimensionally doing things. A lot of figuring out, like, okay, what character needs to go in what spot, and, what character with what item. And, you have to work with, timing and doing the puzzles in the right timing and the right order and doing the right kind of combat. And it really just adds a lot to it just adds a pretty good layer to the whole like general Zelda stuff that you're used to seeing in Zelda games. But I guess I feel like kind of peters off after that. Yes, it is cool that there are a lot of different challenges for all these different levels, which makes replay value a lot better. But I think it's only good if you're playing, like it's only really good if you play through all the stuff and then go back and do the challenges and play through those when you want to play the game again. But most people are going to try to play the challenges right away and they want to get all the stuff done because there's a bunch of challenges to do. Between 8 worlds and there's 4 levels and 4 challenges each. That's a lot of stuff to get done. And doing the same level 4 times is not necessarily all that fun. You get kind of, even with those different like little tweaks to them, they still get kind of annoying. But sometimes you feel like you have to do them even more too, because if you don't end up getting the right kind of treasure, it's not available. You don't get it lucky from the daily riches place, you don't get it from the shop, then you kind of are forced to just play those challenges and stuff again to try and get it. And that means you're playing these levels, over 4 times, and that's a little bit of overkill. Especially when there's a decent amount of content even with just the regular levels anyways. I don't know, I guess that kind of bugged me, or like it's not necessarily fun to do the same level over and over and over and over again. It's a little tedious. You can use the skip function, which is if you hit that, you can then skip a section and go on to the next. You can skip a stage and go to the next stage in a level, and you get like 3 of those. So basically, as long as you can complete one of those, you can do that. If you complete one stage, you can get through the whole thing using the skips. But every time you skip, it takes away one of the pieces of treasure and replaces it with 20 rupees. So if you use it the first time, the one unique piece of treasure is going to be taken away, and the next time, one of the other 2 of the more normal treasure is going to be taken away. If you do it 3 times, then you're going to get 20 rupees at the end, regardless. And I think that's kind of it's annoying, but if you want to get through those challenges, I guess. But then also that kind of defeats the point of the challenges anyways, because that's not challenging to just skip everything. So it's a little pointless to do that. I guess it's mostly just to maybe skip ahead to a section that you're having trouble with and try to practice on it. And it's good so you can just play all through this other stuff, regardless of your skill level. So it's nice for that, but I still found it a little cheap. And I don't think you should be able to use it on bosses, but you can even on the final boss. Maybe that wasn't such a great idea. I also think part of the problem is that there's no exploration with the game either. Which is a big problem with, I feel like Four Swords Adventures had a similar issue. But for people who like Zelda games, that's one of the things that Legend of Zelda was built on, was exploration. And it's just not here, You can kind of go off the beaten path in a few places in some of these levels, but for the most part, you're going to be sticking to a pretty linear way of going about things. And I guess that lack of adventure can be a pretty big downside for people who are fans of typical Zelda games. And another part of that is that it's the progression, I guess, is that you keep going through and you feel like, in typical Zelda game, you get stronger, you keep collecting items, and, you're getting more hearts, and it feels like an overall sense of progression. But in here, instead of that, it feels like, you can get all these different outfits, but you can only put on one outfit during a level at the beginning of it. So it's not like you're just accumulating, like you have all these possibilities, but you don't have a full thing that you can switch on the fly of these different outfits. You don't have a full arsenal of weapons. You only get whatever item is given to you on the level, and your health doesn't go up or anything. So there's not really a sense of this whole continuous progression. It's just a weird kind of bits and pieces of mild progression, and it's more like giving you more opportunities than it is making you stronger. Or anything. The only thing that's really a sense of progression in that is just that you're getting more skill as you play, which is pretty much what any game would do. And I think another thing is that because you have to repeat everything so much, and because it doesn't feel like you're really progressing and, gaining anything from doing that, it's not really that addictive to play it. It's not one where you want to, just keep playing and playing and playing. And it might be for some people, I'm sure, but I found myself a lot of the time just, playing it for a little bit in short bursts, and, playing, a few levels. Like, that was fun. And then kind of wanting to stop because I would get fatigued from it. I would get a little tired of playing it. And that's not something I really had in other Zelda games. Most other Zelda games, I was like, oh, yeah, this is fun. It's awesome. It's like, I guess I should probably, sleep or eat food at some point, because those things, you need those to live. So I guess I can take a break for that. Like, they're really fun. But this one, it's not that it's not fun, but it's so, like, tedious and, like, repetitive in places, and there's not a real sense of progression. It's just, like, it feels kind of like levels. You're just kind of playing through these different levels, and you're like, okay, well, I'll pick it up later then, because I can just pick it up and put it down, which is fine for a handheld. And it's just certainly different. It's, like, not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a different kind of experience than other Zelda games had, and not one I preferred. So I guess that's where a lot of my complaints come from. Also, the story is, Zelda's never had real strong stories necessarily, but I don't feel real motivated. The fact that they focus on, that piece of clothing being stuck to your body by magic, they kind of explain, like, oh, that's horrible because it's ugly, instead of saying, like, the other real horrors of that, like, how do you go to the bathroom with that thing stuck on your body or something. There are other reasons why that would be horrible that aren't explained or looked at, but it's a simple plot. I guess I can't be too upset about it, since it's more about gameplay anyway. But there are also a few little dialogue pieces I thought were weird, like, I don't know, seeing people say, like, one guy was calling me bro. I thought that was strange. One of the characters used the word adorbs. I don't know why that's in a Zelda game. It doesn't seem to fit, but I guess it's Hytopia. It's supposed to be all hip and everything, I guess. Also, someone used the word groovy sauce, which I don't think anyone uses, so that was weird. But that's just super light, like, not even really a complaint. It's just weird that they would do that. Weird in a way that is not a charming kind of weird that I'm used to with Zelda stuff, so but it's not a big deal. And there's more stuff to this, I suppose, but unfortunately, I guess not really unfortunately, but sort of, I guess, for me, there's recently an update put out for the game that adds in a new area, along with some other fixes and stuff, but adds in a whole new area to the game that has 30 plus levels. So that's like almost like doubling the size of your game. And that extra area is a bunch of challenges where you're basically fighting a bunch of enemies in these little arenas and stuff, which I think was really fun. I played a little bit of that, and I played it online, so I would see what it's like to play online, and everything. And so that new area looks cool, I guess, if you're into the whole gameplay thing, especially the combat aspect. It's just supposed to be more difficult because you have to kill all the enemies. Playing online is about the same as playing by yourself, though. The only thing is that it offers different, advantages and disadvantages. And I only played a bit, so I'm obviously much more familiar with the single-player campaign. But it's a bit of a thing where it's like, like fighting a lot of enemies typically tends to be easier with all players because you can do things simultaneously, separately. You don't have to, you can get around enemies and hit them from behind and distract them and everything. Whereas by yourself, you have to, distract and then attack and do all these different steps all by yourself, which can be really, really difficult. Then again, doing puzzles by yourself tends to be easier because you can go at your own pace, you can set things up, you can experiment with things to try and solve it. Whereas if you have a bunch of other people just moving around, it's really hard to communicate, because the only way you communicate is through these few select, little symbol things you can hit on the bottom that bring up weird, like, faces, and it's like, they don't necessarily help. So, pros and cons to that, I suppose. And then there's the Coliseum, which is just you fighting other characters to try and get some loot. Just fighting other players. It's not really that exciting. It's a neat distraction, I suppose, and if you want to get those other materials, it's fine, but for the most part, it's kind of boring. And it's not something I'd really do for fun myself. Just kind of an extra thing there. And I do want to also just bring up that I think part of the issue I had with this too is that a lot of times it feels really annoying because you have these 3 different characters, but when you're playing single player, you have to keep switching between the different the different ones, and picking them up and moving the other ones or switching the other ones just to move everyone around. So it takes a long time to do everything by yourself. I think some of the time trial things either are really hard or possibly impossible, but they're probably just really hard by yourself because of that. But it's frustrating because I don't know, like, it's just annoying to have to, like, pick the other characters and do that, or to switch to them and move them along and keep everyone moving in the same place and everything. Whereas something like, again, the comparison to Four Swords Adventures, where it's like you could just have them all follow you by the push of a button, and then switch between them with the push of a button and set up formations with them. And I feel like that game overall did it a lot better for controlling all the characters, rather than in this one where you have to do everything so separately or try to stack them and do all this weird stuff, and it's difficult, so I don't know. But there are pros and cons to the whole single player multiplayer thing. I knew I was getting it mostly for single player anyways. And that's mostly that. I guess when it comes down to it, it's not a bad game or anything. It's a fun game. There's a lot of content, but I don't know. Like the fun and interesting things they do get kind of lost in the tedium of the whole thing, and it's a weird atmosphere. There's not really any adventure stuff, and honestly, it's a game that I feel like is going to only have, a certain appeal. It's appealing to a certain crowd, and this crowd is not necessarily the same crowd who buys Zelda games typically. The Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes is alright. What I would say, though, is here, there's a lot of content in this game. There's a ton. And maybe try out the demo and see if you like it. If you're interested in this and you really like what this game does, because it does do the whole puzzles and combat thing really interestingly for Zelda type puzzles and combat, as long as, as well as having some interesting twists on it and everything. And if you like it, you'll probably like it a lot. It'll be definitely worth getting if you're into it. But if you're on the fence about it, I'm going to say that this isn't necessarily something that most Zelda fans are going to want. So, if you're a big Zelda fan, or if you're someone who's interested in it in general, I would say that it's probably something you only want to drop like $20 on. So unless you really like what it does, then that's the only time I'm going to say it's probably worth full price, is if you're really, really into this. And I honestly, I don't know, I don't hate it or anything. I was expecting more, I suppose, and it was okay, but it's one of those games where there's so much stuff to do that by the time I would have finished it all, and I still didn't even finish it all yet, I would have, been like, I don't ever want to do that again. Which is why I'm probably not keeping it. But it was worth checking it out, because it was one of those games where, like, I was super excited about it when I heard about the game. There's no new Zelda games coming out on a 3DS that I actually have now, so I can try it out, and I bought it, like, the day after it launched, and then Zelda Month happened, and I had to play all that stuff before I could even try this out, and I couldn't finish it in time for Zelda Month, and I played it, and I'm glad that I had the experience, but I'm just probably not going to play it again. It's another one of those unfortunate games where it's like, I like it, but I'm not seeing a reason to keep it around for me personally. Since I don't have a collection thing I'm doing, anyways, so that's the game. If feel like I was gonna say something else about it, but I can't remember what it was. So what did you guys think of the game? Leave that in the comments. If you're looking for a multiplayer Zelda game, this is it. This is probably the one you want to get because it's the best to get into. Because you can actually play online and everything. So check it out. Lots of stuff, but just be aware of what you're going to pay for it, I guess. All right. Well, I think I talked enough. So I guess I'm also. Well, that's what I was going to say. I just kind of wanted to do this because I said I was going to finish it up and do that, and also I just wanted to tell you guys about it for the hat. Obviously, I wanted to get it out for now, and hopefully, if you're thinking about it, like holiday season, if you're thinking of getting this for someone, or maybe you got some holiday money, you're like, oh, maybe I could get this. Consider that stuff, and obviously, I mean, it's up to you, but take that into consideration when you're thinking of getting this game. Well, that concludes everything I was going to ever do for Zelda Month, and hopefully it was okay. I wanted to be quieter, I guess, today, so that's why I wasn't as loud, because I felt like it. Sorry if the low energy was bad, but again, if you're interested, you can go to www.thegravelpit.net or go to the link in the description to see the written review of the game, and leave whatever you want in the comments. I don't know, I didn't really know what to say for this one. Maybe what was your favorite outfit in here? I personally really like the ninja one where you get like extra energy, and I like the ruby regalia just because it was nice for just getting rupees and buying stuff without having to go through a bunch of levels to do stuff. You just walk around the town and farm rupees really easily with it, so it was probably the most useful for me. And that's a nice tip for you, so you don't have to do a bunch of stuff over and over again. Well, that's everything, so